What's going on, Niner fam? It is Peter Lucas, and I got with me today Mr. Weston P Smith from Island 49. And you've seen him on, he does another show with Steph. And why don't you, and Steph Sanchez, who does, we know, all tremendous work, draft, all that good stuff. She's podding all over the place. She's everywhere. And now I see more and more of Mr. Weston right along with her. But Weston, why don't you tell? Well, before we get to any of it, we got to hit the music.
Ladies and gentlemen,
I like to know,
are you ready for start time?
And once again, it is Peter Lucas. This is the Niner Fanatic Podcast. And make sure you give the video a like. Make sure that you give it a subscribe. Make sure that you hit the bell so you get the notifications for when I go live. And once again, I've got Mr. Weston P Smith from Island 49. And make sure you check out his YouTube page. Why don't you tell everybody where they can find you on the socials and all the other places where I'm sure you got content going up?
I'm probably, first of all, I mean, that intro slaps a little bit, Pete. I won't lie.
A little bit. I made it myself.
I mean, the head was bobbing, so we're off to a great start here. Love it. I'm probably too easy to find, so it's Island 49 on YouTube. The only social media right now is Twitter, and it's actually my personal Twitter handle, so at Smith and Wesson. Little pun around the actual name there. Everybody feels affiliated to the Gunn family. No relation whatsoever. But I'm just happy to be here, man. Kids, well, one was in bed. And this is the perfect time of night, and we get to talk some Niner ball. So happy that you reached out.
Yeah, for sure. I'm happy to have you. And like we're right ready to get into training camp. This episode today is going to be about the offensive side of the ball, and there is nothing better to talk about I'm a defensive guy, but there's just so many weapons and so many things to talk about the 49ers offense. They give us stuff to talk about every day. And so we're going to talk a little bit about the offensive side, get you guys ready for training camp. And we're going to talk about some of the news that I'm sure a lot of people have heard about, but we got to give our perspective. And I know I'm interested to hear Weston's perspective on a few of these things. But just so you know, we are on Twitter. We're on Facebook. We are on Twitch. We are on – I'm not on Instagram yet, but it's coming. And I will be on playback soon as well. And if you don't like looking at my face, you can always get the audio version anywhere where you can get your audio podcast. So there is no excuse. I don't care where you get it. Just get it.
Just find me. Just find it.
But so with all we're gonna start talking about the 49er offense, and we're poised. It's poised really to take a step forward. And it seems like every single year we talk about how great this team is and how the roster is just unbelievable at least the last couple of years. But I think we're really poised to take a step forward this year, having a fully healthy Purdy, being unchallenged, and he actually gets a whole offseason to train and all that good stuff. What is there anything in your mind that can kind of derail this offense and keeping it from reaching its potential?
I think there's two things, and I don't even want to say the full word, but the I word, right? That we went through in 2020. Injuries are always something you got to be concerned of. I think they were fortunate enough to be healthy for the most part offensively for the entire season. I know we had that little 3-game losing skid in the middle of the year with no Debo, but outside of that, you got production and the most important availability from the vast majority of the offense. So I think it's that, and then I think of just consistency, right? This was the first year, and it's very hard to be consistent in this league, right? That's one of the great things about the NFL is the parity for the most part. But the reality is you're talking about what, like the number two rated offense in terms of just total yards gained last year. They were number 4 overall, I think, passing, number 3 overall rushing, number 3 overall points per game, and that's significantly better than what they've been in years past. So I just think it's just hard to find that level of consistency. I think what bodes well for them is what you mentioned and led with, Pete, is the reality of like another year under Brock, right? Another year to see more maturity from your quarterback. First time in a while, we're entering an offseason where there doesn't feel like there's a quarterback controversy cloud that's just hovering over you in the entire offseason. So just focus on business at hand. That feels good, right? It's the first time we're seeing that in a while. So I think that makes them poised to be able to do it. I just think it's hard to replicate 29 points, per game, right? Like 400 plus yards of total offense per game. Like all of those are hard to do. But I do feel like so long as we get this next subject matter ironed out in the short term, they'll be in a good spot for sure.
Yeah, and I mean, I see that as the one thing that I don't know if it can derail it, and we're going to talk about it in a little bit. But my whole thought process on the 49ers is the one thing. There's a couple of things I feel could derail the season. One is that Shanahan doesn't show the faith in Purdy that we think he's going to this season, and like take that step forward in really Shanny's maturation process. Just because every season I feel like Shanny's matured a little bit more, and he's added a little bit more to his game. And he gets the things that didn't work the season before. He makes a concerted effort to fix those areas for the most part. So I think that's part of it. Is I feel like he needs to show the faith in Purdy that most great coaches show their quarterback. Like and it's almost, and giving Purdy the autonomy to kind of like move guys, simple things that most quarterbacks do, like moving guys around the formation.
Yeah.
And like, I mean, Aiyuk shouldn't just be stationary at the X spot and never get moved anywhere. He's never in motion, ever. So things like that, him being able to call his own protections, simple things like that. And even just kind of fleshing out, and I know this is a nauseated topic for a lot of the fans out there, but it's really, I think it'll really take a step forward for Shanny is just fleshing out that drop back game and not relying so much on play action to get guys open. Yeah. And so how do you feel about Shanny's maturation process?
A little slower than I'd like it to be, and that's not necessarily the like taking the low-hanging fruit of just he hasn't won the Super Bowl, right? Like, which is the most important element of any coach's tenure. I just think that like we're now starting to have conversations about like adjustments and changes he's making year to year, where maybe not so much earlier on in his tenure with the 49ers. But I also think that has to do with like he now finally has the positional pieces to like build confidence in his own play calling and do things differently, because he feels like he's got the guy there. But the one thing you said that I agree so much with is just the adoption or the evolution of the offense, right? Not just being a product of the run game. I think last year was the first year we saw like total parity in terms of like, again, number 3 overall or number 3 rushing game overall, right, in terms of yards per game, so from production perspective, and number 4 in the NFL from a passing game. To see that level of parity in years past, maybe the passing game has fell 14, 15, 16, while the run game's 3, 4, 5, somewhere in there, where it's been so much more dependent upon that. And I think when Kyle was at some of his best is when you saw him down as the OC in Atlanta. And like, what did they have? I mean, they had a a throw first mentality, right? And they had they had Julio Jones. Yes, they had Matt Ryan. But I think if there is more confidence in Brock to do the things that you talked about, move people around, make the adjustments at the line based on what he sees. We tout him so much for what he processes, but we only really get to see what he processes post snap. Not so much like pre-snap. Let's see like where he really is cerebrally, right? As a player. And I think if there's confidence there, there's going to be confidence in like, wow, we can take more of the 5-7 step drop, right? Right. We can stretch the field a little bit more. We can get the ball outside the numbers 16, 20 yards down the field versus everything being reactionary off a fake jet sweep, fake toss, fake whatever it might be, which is still crazy in itself because people are still falling for it, right? Because the threat is so heavy. But I think those are the things you're talking about, right? If we see Kyle take another step in what is so cool about Kyle Shanahan and why I get so crazy when people are like, he's got to go. Like, are you out of your mind? Like, he is – listen, does his head coaching need work? Yeah. But show me a coach in the league that like that's not named Andy Reid or Mike Tomlin, who's been doing this for 30 years, right? Like but as a offensive coordinator and an offensive mind, like show me one better. You know what I mean? And that's what I'm looking for is like, can he take the next, like, can he evolve, right? Does the offense look even different than it has before based on confidence in Purdy, based on maybe some people you've brought in, some rookies you brought in that might be able to stretch the field and do some things? Like how quick do they get involved into this? Or is it same old, same old? But same old was good for 29 points and 430 yards a game last year. And, a number of wins and a Super Bowl appearance. So it's hard to like even if it's the same, I think we're in a good spot, right? Am I wrong?
I would say that Kyle himself says if you stay stagnant, the league is going to catch up to you. 100%. And I think we kind of saw that down the stretch of the season, last season, especially in the playoffs. Yeah. And it was kind of apparent to me that when you go up against those better teams, and we saw it during the season, like when we went up against better defenses, they weren't necessary. They knew the areas of the field the 49ers wanted to go.
No.
And they took advantage of that. They weren't falling for the banana in the tailpipe the whole game. And like that's the thing. Like, I mean, that's the thing is the bells and whistles, great. But you've got some of the best weapons in the league. No. Sometimes it's better just to do a vanilla play and trusting that your player is better than their player. And with as many weapons as they have, I feel like Kyle just needs to let Brock do that part. I think Andy Reid was Kyle back in the day, and I know a lot of people have said this over the year, like they compare the two all the time. But what really gave Andy the freedom was finally he just started. He calls the occasional great play, but for the most part, Pat Mahomes just runs around and makes things happen. And like that's and then Andy Reid gets called a genius because it looks so great.
Yeah.
And he does have the occasional really nice play design. But I mean, Kyle feels the need to everything is scripted. Everything is scripted. Like you've got to have two motions on every play. And sometimes it's just I would like to see him go simpler just so that when he does do those plays, it's a bigger impact, if that makes any sense.
That makes perfect sense. I think that's the biggest. First of all, what a tremendous reference by Banana in the Tailpipe.
Yeah.
I hope we're talking about the same movie here. Yeah. But you got to say, I ain't falling for no Banana in the Tailpipe, man. I like literally.
Yeah, like not all of our viewers are old enough to understand the reference.
Hopefully that gives you a sense of my age, right?
I feel you. Like that. Now I see we're on the same page.
Yeah. Like 100%. I could not have done a better reference in. I'm like off track now because I'm so just enthralled with Beverly Hills Cop, the original. But Peter, what were we just talking about, dude? We were just talking about
Kyle and how we can get he can like kind of evolve as far as not as much all the razzle dazzle.
I got my original statement back. Sorry to blank on you there, but
No worries.
I think this is the pitfall of a lot of the younger, like quote unquote offensive geniuses or even defensive geniuses coaches. They need to be the smartest one on the in the arena that day, right? Like in the stadium, and it's crazy because to me, the NFL is the only sport where coaching actually matters, right? Like professional US based sport. Like I'm still not sure what managers do on the diamond. I think NBA coaches are just glorified babysitters, right? Like how many plays can you actually call on that court, especially with these quote unquote super teams. But I think NFL coaching matters, but I agree with you so much. Sometimes it's like you look at this roster and we talk about them all the time about how like we're the deepest team in the league and blah, blah, blah. Like, let them just go play ball. Like, let them just go be. Yes, we know you're about to run off the left hip of Trent Williams. We know it. Every tip is telling us that it's the right down and distance. Okay, cool. You know what I'm going to do. Stop it. Your man be better than my man, and I'm willing to bet that my man is better than your man. And if you look across the board, I know we're only talking about offense today, but you look offensive and defensively, like you can't really – it's hard. Like the 49ers have players that are the upper echelon of this league across every single position. The chances are your guy is better than their guy. Let them go do their thing.
Yeah, and it is what it is. But I feel like that's the one thing for me that could kind of derail, and we could get into like we could just get into a rut. Yeah. And I don't want them to. But I do think that Kyle wants to evolve a little something here and there every single season. So I don't expect us to get into a rut, but it's when you take away one of the game plan pieces, like when they took away, Debo got hurt, like how you got all these players, how can you not move the ball after that?
Yeah, it looked ugly during those 3 games, man, without 19 or number 1 now, I should say. But it definitely looked ugly without him. And that was perplexing, right? Like is okay, but you still have Brandon Aiyuk. You still have Christian McCaffrey. You still have George Kittle. Like, what's the issue here? Like, is 19 that much? But it's to your point. It's not. It's such a scripted game plan that all that preparation goes into almost calling it one way. Yeah. And when you can't call it that way, you see the struggle bus arrive, For sure. And I like to avoid that. Like, and I think if you are a little bit more flexible in your game planning, if you're a little bit more diverse in terms of just spreading the ball around and opening it up and doing those things, like it makes those ruts farther and fewer between when all is said and done.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, but let's get off of the negative.
Yep.
Let's get off of the negative.
And let's just go to more negative.
The reality is that this team is going to win games this year, 100%. And they're going to win a lot of games. They're going to go to the playoffs. Without some 2020 happening. Other than that, this team is going to be very good, and we've got a lot of things to look forward to. There's a lot of new pieces on the team that I'm looking forward to seeing in some video of in training camp next week. We haven't seen really much of anything out of the rookies being out there. I don't know if they're really doing too much working out. We haven't even heard anything from the beat writers for the most part. So, but I'm really looking forward to training camp starting. If for nothing else, then we're content creators and we need something to talk about. So yeah, but I'm looking forward to it. But we got to talk about Brandon Aiyuk because we're 49er content creators. We got to talk about it. So it is what it is. He asked for a trade the other day. This is my question. So would you, we're going to start off with the Devontae Adams stuff. Yep. Would you trade him for Devontae Adams, and why?
This is going to make me very unpopular, but it's all right. I'm not even popular in my own house. So the reality is no, I wouldn't. And that might sound like crazy. Now, if that was let me clarify. if we woke up tomorrow morning and Brandon Aiyuk was traded for Devontae Adams straight up, I wouldn't be disappointed about what we received in return. I mean, Devontae Adams is what he is, right? Like a top 3-4 wide receiver in the NFL year after year. We've seen him produce with the best at quarterback. We've seen him produce with the not so great at quarterback, right? So love everything about Tay. The reality is I wouldn't, if it was me who had the ability to authorize or decline this trade, I would not make this trade because the problem that we're running into with Brandon Aiyuk right now is the $30 million plus wide receiver, right? Like a cap restriction. Devontae Adams is a $30 million a year wide receiver. So you're running into the same problem where I feel like I would hedge my bet. And if I had to stretch to 28, 29, even $30 million, I think I want to take the homegrown guy. The one that does it, the one that doesn't have a personality that's larger than life and commands more attention than the team. Like we've seen Devontae do. Like he's a superstar. Like he's a global superstar. And that brings its own headaches and its own drama in a sense. So I keep the guy that I know knows the 49er way, if there is such a thing. I keep the guy that I know that I've seen with my own eyes block his rear end off downfield. Now, apologies to Devontae. I've not watched enough Green Bay tape or enough Green Bay games or even Las Vegas games to say that he doesn't do that, right? But I know he's also at the point in his career where he doesn't have to do that, where Brandon still has to do those things that I just think fit this team better. My concern is, do we have the guy? I just don't think there's a spot for a wide receiver on this team that commands 130, 140, 150 targets a year. That's not the way the offense is drawn.
He's not going to get that.
Yeah, just changing the one headache for the same headache, in my opinion. And so I want to keep the guy. If I am going to shell out the money, I want to keep the guy that's familiar with this team, familiar with this staff, familiar with these players, and familiar with how we go about our business.
Yeah, I mean, first off, he's not going to get that many targets.
No,
that's not going to happen. And would he get frustrated by that? I don't know. I think that winning cures all.
Yeah, for sure.
And when you are winning, nobody's really complaining about how the sausage is made. I mean, it is what it is. Like, but it's when you're losing, that's when you see the snippets on the receiver show about and the complaints about the quarterback and like all that kind of stuff. Yeah, when you're losing, everything's going bad. But Devontae, I would not trade for Devontae either. And the reason being is a lot of the same reasons that you have. I look at the culture. I am a big culture guy. And the Shanny and Lynch have created a phenomenal homegrown culture here for the most part. Like there's some trades in there and some free agent pickups. But for the most part, this is a homegrown team. And Brandon exemplifies all of it because he's worked hard from the moment he got in the building. They put him in the doghouse. Like he had to work his way out of that with Shanny. I would say he's our hardest working receiver, and he's the best route runner we have. He also, like you said, blocks his ass off. Like, I mean, he puts in all of the effort. Like there is no better example. They even had him calling plays I remember in training camp last year. Like they trust him that he's a part of the culture. And I don't think that we want to lose that right before we're going into a season. No. Also, I think it sets a bad precedent. Like, because as much as the 49ers have paid their guys over and over and over again, all it takes is one. All it takes is one, and then all of a sudden you're known as an organization. Well, they may not pay you. Look what they did to Brandon.
No,
like so, it doesn't take much to get to lose that identity. And so yeah, I'm big on Brandon. I think Devontae Adams still has something in the tank, but he's 32.
Nope.
Like, I mean, he's not a great receiver. And he's probably he is a better overall receiver than Brandon Aiyuk. But Brandon gives you it's different. He gives you different things that I think are more valuable to what the 49ers do. And that's the key. Like, because it's just, for me at least, like it's the key because the 49ers are not like every other team in the league.
Nope.
Like we ask our receivers to do different things than any other receivers, and like if they don't do those things, they're not here for long.
No, I think you just had the money statement. Like, who fits the team better? What fits the team better? And that's the problem that we're in here in the first place is like, why the 49ers ain't just jump right up to $30 million. Like, be very clear. They have the money to do this. This is not really an issue, right? When you're talking about $2, $3, $4 million annually, you find that in a restructure next year. You don't even have to deal with that this year. You know what I mean? Just put pen to paper and move on. But the reality is like, I don't think they feel confident that they, based on the way this offense is crafted, that they could validate spending $30 million a year plus on a wide receiver. Again, because the offense is not designed to funnel through a single individual. Like we saw when it was Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams in Green Bay. Like when Aaron Rodgers dropped back, you knew where the ball was going. Yeah. On the most crucial of downs, you knew. Everybody in the stadium knew. Couldn't stop it, right? Because they were that good. Our offense isn't designed that way. I mentioned the plethora of targets. Like, that's just not going to happen. So that's the hard pill here to swallow. I think if it was $30 million, now I think the 49ers should just part with the money and call it a day because you put all this to rest. You get rid of this drama. But it's about, is he worth $30 million, take the wide receiver label out of it, talk about what he just does for the team. Yes, to me, he is. Right? Like, that's what the scale says to me. Like, it tilts in his favor of he's worth the money. He's worth the money because he doesn't strike me as like, now I always get worried when you got to pay wide receivers because I always worry about that drop off year, right? Like, I got my bag. I got, all my guarantees coming to me. That kind of money just shines a light on work differently than it was before. You're not working for that ultimate goal. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no. And I mean, it's inevitably after Debo got paid, a little bit of drop off.
Yep.
After Bosa got paid, a little bit of a drop off. Not that they're working any less hard it's just for whatever reason. I don't know if it's an exhale moment or what it is. But it just happens that for most players, and it's kind of weird. But do you think that Aiyuk is here, or do you think he ends up getting traded?
I think he's here. I think if they were really serious about moving on from him, it probably would have already been done. But I think. Now, from the 49ers lens, right? Like, I think he's here. I think he's here long term, and I think they have a couple of different ways to tackle this. They could just as easily knock this out with an extension right here, right now. They could play him on the 5th year and play hardball a little bit and then slap a franchise tag on him for the following year. Like, there's still a lot that I think they can control. I just think it makes too much sense to get this ironed out for the long term before the start of the season. My suspicion here is it's still going to get uglier before it gets better, and that means that Aiyuk's going to have to play his final card. The second to last card was trade me, right? Like, demanding this trade. And the 49ers, for all intents and for everything we know, they were listening to trades since the offseason began, trade scenarios since the offseason began. Just didn't hear anything that caught their attention that was serious enough to explore in any further detail. They never were like, no, we're not trading you. You know what I mean? Like, it was just always an open dialogue, open discussion, etc. But I think his last card now is, and I think we saw reports of it today about like, holding out. Right. And saying, I'm going to play minimum games or, whatever I have to do to accrue the 5th year, et cetera. He's going to eat a ton of fines. I think the 49ers would make the fines go away if they ironed out a contract based on days that he missed training camp. Yeah. But you start missing games, I'm not ironing those out. That's your lost paycheck.
I don't think they can.
I probably can, right?
Yeah, I don't think they can. I think that's the rule.
The CBA somewhere, but I think they get it ironed out. I think you're going to hear another threat about like he's not going to play and wants a trade, but it does not benefit the 49ers whatsoever unless it is a Devontae Adams-esque player to make this trade. Like, you will get worse in 2024. You're not going to get better. That day is come and gone. But I liken this to probably mid August, and they're gonna have to kiss a little hiney like along the way to patch it back up a little bit, and I think they're willing to do it. They just want to see, this is what they do for whatever reason. I have no idea why, but this is what they do, and they seem to get a bargain out of it when they do it.
I've got a couple of theories as to why they do. It still makes no sense. Don't get me wrong. It still makes absolutely zero sense the way that they choose to do things. But I've got a couple of theories as to why just really one theory as to why they do it that way. But I also think that he's going to get re-signed. And I don't think they'll trade him because it wouldn't make any sense right now, just as you were saying, just because all they're going to get back is picks. It's going to be really hard for them to get a player and a pick or a player to match what's leaving the building.
No.
And for the dollar amount that you want. So that's going to be really difficult, which is why I think the 49ers right off the bat said, no, you're not going anywhere. You're not going anywhere. We're going to talk, even though we're not talking to you right now. We're going to talk when we're ready to talk.
Yep.
And I think it's always kind of a power play with them. But I really think people say that they're kind of ridiculous for waiting, and they could have had him for less money earlier. But think about how that affects a player. When you get paid and you think you got broke off, if they had played him earlier and then he sees what's his name, Jalen Waddle, his deal, and then he sees
Jefferson,
and he sees all these other deals popping off like crazy. How do you think that would have made him feel? That would have made him feel he would have felt kind of stupid because he would have said his agent should have waited. Yeah. And I look at it like I think the 49ers they wait and see on all of their deals because they want to get their guys, if not the most money, close to it, just so that they can say they're going to structure it the way that they want to structure it to keep the cap flexibility and all that kind of stuff. But they want to make the contract look like they really care. Yeah. And that's the way I see it. And I know that it kind of looks stupid to a lot of people, but I think it's not necessarily. It's worked for them so far, and all their players seem to really be invested in the organization. But I think that's part of the reason why is because they're known for paying their guys, and it's gonna be a lot of funny money. It's gonna sound great on paper. It's gonna essentially probably be like a 2-year deal. But it'll probably be stretched out to 4, and it's going to be some ridiculous number. They're going to say it's going to be $29 million a year annually. But the key is going to be the guaranteed money. I think he needs more guaranteed money than Debo got. And then I think that he needs to have just a little bit more than Jalen Waddle in total guarantees, which I think they can get it under to $29 million a year. And I think that makes both sides happy. But they've got to hammer those things out and show him, hey, we're going to put all this, we're going to structure this in this way. You've seen what we do every year. We're just going to, next year, we're going to turn that salary into guaranteed money next year. We're just going to keep restructuring, kicking the can down the road. You're going to get your money.
Yeah. I agree. I actually had never really thought about it under the lens that you proposed in terms of just like how would BA, the player, feel had he signed a contract that one day he was very happy about, and then 4 weeks later find out he's underpaid, right? Yeah. Commensurate to the market. I've always positioned that I thought the 49ers did this because this was just a hypothesis, right? At best, this to say they wait till later because I think they want to take all the time they can to make sure that they have the best options available to them going into the season, right? Like, you never know. Is there another player who's having a contract dispute at a position that's of greater value than like wide receiver might be to the 49ers? Can you make that swap and you're a better team because you brought in an all-pro edge rusher? I'm making this up, right? But like, I think they look at the entirety of the scenario.
Yeah.
If there's anything that I can say about the 49ers, they've showed me that they're not afraid to go get somebody if they want to go get them. Look at Emmanuel Sanders brought in the middle of the year, bringing in Trent Williams after Joe Staley retirement, Christian McCaffrey, right, in the middle of the 2022 season. Like, they will go find the people to make them better. And I just don't think they want to commit all their chips until they know that, like, yes, this is the best case scenario for us. I don't think it's about the money at all. I don't think they even care of paying him $26 million versus $30 million. Is he the best option? And I think what they do sometimes is they take all the other, you string along the player. Now there's no real other options, right? Like Brandon Aiyuk wants to get paid now. It's all about the guarantee. It's not about the annual. We all know that, right? He wants to get paid now. He keeps playing hardball. Well, he's playing on this year's. He's going to forfeit 6 or 7 game checks, right? So that is literally what? More than a third, right? Almost half of his annual salary gone. And then he's got to bet on himself to go into next year to think that A, he produces in those 10 games if he wants to sit out games. B, stays healthy through all of that. C, the wide receiver market needs to remain as hot as it is. I think you're going to see a die down wide receiver market in a few years, even though it's a pass first league, because you're getting so much production out of these rookies that are under rookie contracts. Like, why do I got to go pay the big guy, right? I can go get somebody else cheaper, and that gives me sustainability over the next 3 or 4 years. So I think they just try to look at the entirety of the scenario. They slow play it to make sure that they're confident going into camp and going into the season. They got all the right players at all the right position that they can have, right? But I think eventually, if I'm in BA's camp, I'm like, look, we're going to say all these bad things, right? We're going to say I need to be traded. We're going to say I'm going to hold out, etc. Reportedly, the last 49er offers at $26 million. If they come to 28, we're saying yes, so long as the guarantee looks commensurate to what these guys just got guaranteed, and we're gonna call it a day. And I think we get to that point. I just think we're still 3 weeks, maybe even a month away from that.
I think that's a good bet, like 3 weeks or so. And I see, I want to say what's up to the guys in the chat, Roberto and Robin the Bay. Appreciate you guys coming through. And but yeah, Robin the Bay was saying something about they'll trade him before the locker room becomes toxic. I think that the locker room doesn't necessarily, it'll never get toxic, like just because these guys all understand what BA is going through. And we've got too many vets on this squad that have already been through this with the 49ers. And they know how the team runs. They know how they move. And so this is not a surprise to any of them. Debo even said that he talked to Brandon already about, hey, don't be taking any of this stuff personal because it's just the game. Like, I agree. I think it's going to be 2 or 3 weeks maybe. And I just think that it is what it is. Like, is he going to be? But you had an interesting point, and I lost it. Like, you had an interesting point, and I had a question. Oh, that was what it was. I got it back now. This is my question, because you said something that really kind of spoke to me. With all the receivers coming in and all these young guys coming in, do you think the wide receiver market could ever go the way of the running back?
Yeah, I do, but not as drastic, right? I mean, you and I are old enough to remember where if you didn't have a running game, you weren't a competitive team
at all,
right? Like that's what the NFL was. You didn't have 4,500, 5,000 yard passers, right? Outside of Dan Marino, right? And that was an anomaly in the NFL. I do see it dwindling because I think it's supply and demand. You know what I mean? Like, look at the top running backs in the league that are making the money that they're making. Well, there's very few of them. Most go by committee. Most do whatever. There's few bell cow big names left in this league. And surprise, surprise, they're the ones that tout the largest paychecks. I just think with the wide receivers, it's just too many, right? And when you have 3, 4, like if you are a pass first team and you have 3 or 4 wide receivers that see the field quite often, it's hard to pay them all. And you are just getting these rookies that, second year players that just like storm onto the season and consistently, are 1,000-yard plus wide receivers getting up there. And, unless if they are outside the first round, you're talking about a couple $1 million a year versus $29-30 million a year. You know what I mean? Like, it's the production eventually will not match the cost associated to the position, and that will rectify it. But I think teams are on high alert to just quickly say, like, all right, like, let's monitor what these rookies are doing, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But why do you think every single year now you're seeing 5, 6, 7 wide receivers being taken in the first round? Like, go find your guy, go get your guy, and slot him in. And, you know, if he's half the player that you thought he was when you drafted him, he's probably going to get you 800 plus yards so long as he stays healthy. My question to BA is, like, and I agree with you on, I'm not worried about the locker room. Too many vets who've gone through this themselves. This is a tight-knit group. It's fine. I don't think it's as bad as content creators in the media are portraying it. This is just the negotiation process in the modern day NFL. But what I would say to BA is, like, is it really better? Like, if you want to go, I keep seeing all of this stuff about Jaden Daniels. You want to go play for that? I know he's your boy, but you want to go play for that franchise
That
right
is
now?
hilarious.
Like, and for a guy who, honestly, I personally believe Jaden Daniels will be a good NFL quarterback. I'm not saying great. I'm not saying poor. I'm saying I think he'll be a good starter in the league. But you're going to hitch your wagon to that? You think you might get 130, 40 targets, but how many of them are going to be hospital balls? How many of those, like, are you going to survive an entire season? Like, the game's just different from college to the NFL. And that's what I would say. Like, are you really going to play those cards for $1 million a year?
It's the unknown.
Yeah, the answer is no. You're going to compete for Super Bowls as long as you're on this roster. What are we doing here?
Yeah, and I mean, this is the thing. It's not, to me, it's not even about Jaden Daniels. You're gonna go to, and I get it. Adam Peters is there, new regime, new coaching staff. I get it, but until proven otherwise, like, that place is a place where quarterbacks go to die. Like, I mean, there's no. When was the last time that I think Kirk Cousins was the last decent quarterback they had? That was years ago.
No,
and it's just, I don't see them being a good team this year. And I think it's going to take time if they do get okay. And like you said, Jane Daniels is a rookie quarterback. The odds of him being great out the box and getting you the targets and the numbers that you think is that you deserve and everything, the odds of that happening are pretty small in my opinion. That's just not the way the league traditionally works. Could it happen? Of course, it could. Anything could happen. Things happen all the time. Like, guys just burst onto the scene, and it just changes the fabric of the NFL. Happens every single year. That's why we love the NFL, is because parity is king.
Yeah,
I get it, but I mean, you're gonna go from a Mercedes basically to a souped-up Hyundai.
yeah.
And nothing against Hyundais, because I used to have one. but it's still a Hyundai.
Yeah, it's still a different vehicle, right? Yeah.
So, but long story short is that I think BA is going to be here, and I think that eventually this is going to be a moot point. We're going to be talking next year about the same thing with Purdy, and everybody's going to say, I don't think it'll get this far. I don't even think there'll be a trade request because Purdy's going to be Purdy. Like, but yeah, we're going to be talking again about how the 49ers, are they going to wait all the way up until such and such a time? And it's going to be another silly farce.
They are the gift that keeps on giving.
Yeah. I mean, I appreciate it. I appreciate it because we always have something to talk about, but
always.
We're going to move on to the running back room, and everybody's favorite running back, CMC. You know, he's going to get all the touches. Again, I know that Kyle says that he's going to try and give him and, like, kind of treat him with kid gloves this year, but I don't believe it. But who do you think gets the majority of the second in touches?
This is my gut. Again, not what I would do, what I'm thinking here. I think Elijah Mitchell's still the lead dog for the number 2 spot. I think he, when healthy, has had a lot of production, like a ton of production, right? Like pre-CMC, this is a team that played in the NFC Championship game, and Elijah Mitchell was the guy, right? Like he was the guy in the backfield. I personally would love to see a little bit more of JP Mason, a little Jordan Mason. I just think opposite running styles, etc. I am excited to see some of these rookies. Don't sleep on that because it is a Kyle Shanahan-led offense, and we all know how he loves those rookie undrafted, late round drafted, a la Elijah Mitchell, right? And a Jordan Mason and a Raheem Mostert. And you want me to keep going on about these people? Matt Breida. Yeah, about these people that nobody, Alfred Morris, like I'll go anywhere you want to go and we'll talk about this.
Yeah.
But I still think it's Elijah Mitchell. I think Kyle Shanahan likes him. I think Kyle Shanahan trusts him. I think the biggest knock on Mitchell is availability. Now I think it's short leash, right? Like I think if like he's banged up week 1, week 2, and it's knee bursitis or like a bruised MC, you know what I mean? Like those things that just keep you out like a week here, a week there. I think it's done. I think the first time he's not available, I think you don't see him again the rest of the season unless there's a severe issue there, because I think there's enough depth. But I still think pecking order is CMC, 97.5% of the touches, and then Elijah Mitchell, maybe 1% of the touches, and then the other 1.5% divided up amongst the other whoever's on the active roster that week.
Yeah. The only thing that gives me pause is the fact that they brought in the undrafted guy and they drafted a guy.
Yep.
And the reason why it gives me pause about Elijah Mitchell is because, because of the injury issues with Elijah Mitchell. But what I think it could do is make him a trade asset. Like just because they didn't draft this guy to sit on the bench. Now, I think that Jordan Mason, the reason why I don't think that they'll move off it, they love him on special teams. He is a really good special teams player. So my key is if they do keep Elijah Mitchell, the issue, because I do believe that Elijah Mitchell is probably the best back other than CMC, but this is the thing. How do you plan on him being available? And I think that's really what it comes down to. So as far as Jordan Mason goes, he's gotten a little bit better every season. He's still going to miss blocks. He's still going to run the wrong route from time to time. But they do like him on special teams, and I think that's what kept him on the team. I think that Isaac Guerrero is going to have to be a standout on special teams. I think that is going to have to happen for him to be on this squad. And I don't think the other guy, Schrader, I don't think he makes it. I think he's going to end up on the practice squad.
And probably get poached by somebody because he was highly productive in college. Here's my counter, right? Or not even my counter. Here's why I lean towards Mitchell, and it sounds like you are too, right? And just in terms of skill set, I mean, he should be worried. But why else is he here if it's not to be the number 2 guy? Mm-hmm. You cut him anytime this offseason, pre-June 1, or even post-June, $45,000. That's your cap hit. Yeah. $45,000, right? Like, we're not talking about millions of dollars in the cap hit. You're talking about $45,000 with a savings of $1 million back to your cap number. So just knowing those two things, he's here. He's still around for a reason. We'll find out real quick, man. Camp is long. Camp is grueling. I mean, not what it was when we were growing up and they were actually truly doing 2 and 3 a days and going all day and killing each other Monday through Friday on the field. But you can keep him around long enough because he is a camp body and he's not costing you that much against the cap. But he's literally like I said, $46,000 if I'm rounding up, if you were to cut him right now as of this conversation. So if you didn't have intention of keeping him for a purpose, he would have been long gone, is my guess.
Yeah. And before we go any further, the chat just exploded. So appreciate everybody coming through. Red Jet, always a pleasure, ma'am. And I see my guy David McNiner. Make sure that you give my guy a follow. Him and Brian Kilp do some great things on YouTube. They got a YouTube channel as well, so make sure you check out my guys. Give them a subscribe, all that good stuff. But yeah, I think that it could go either way for Elijah Mitchell. I just think that if they were going to move off of him, this would be the time when he's healthy and when he was relatively healthy last season.
Yeah.
So I think this would be the time to get something for him if you were going to get something for him. You just drafted Isaac Guerrero. Jordan Mason can run the ball.
Sure can.
And he can take the 3 carries that Mitchell was getting. So, I mean, it's not like you have to have him. I think he does give you a little bit of depth, but I think it's going to depend on how Isaac Guerrero looks like in camp, because he wasn't the most natural running back in college, and he's got a ton of athletic talent, but I think that he's got to learn how to be a running back in Kyle's system, and I think it's a lot for a rookie. Yeah. So it just depends on how he looks. I think that's really going to be the key. I think Cody Schrader, he's got all the things that Isaac Guerrero doesn't have. He's got the natural instincts. He's got the moves. He's got the footwork. He's got all those things. He just doesn't have the speed.
He's not a home run ball. And that's what they need.
And yeah, he doesn't have the speed. And when you're doing that against college guys, it's fine because you're still on that a significantly lower level. But when you get to the pros and these guys are all, you got defensive ends running like linebackers, it's a little bit different. So I don't expect Cody Schrader to, even though he's already a fan favorite. I think that we're going to see some of him in preseason, and then I think he's gonna, because he's going against third stringers and like that kind of stuff. People are going to be like, why isn't he making the team? But he's going to end up on the practice squad.
Yeah. I agree. I think we already know the order, right?
Yeah.
So we'll find out though. I mean, this is what's so crazy. We're a week away, baby.
Oh man, we're gonna find out soon. I cannot wait to have actual video to talk about and to just see where we're going to be, because we know we're going to be good. The 49ers know they're going to be good. It's just who pops in camp, and that's the key. And really, the one area of the offense that I am truly looking to get some clarity on what it's going to look like is this O-line, because I think right now fans are uncertain as to what this is. They weren't happy last year with them. Kyle didn't help at all this offseason, just because of him and Chris Forster basically telling people that we care about the weapons. We just really want pylons out there as offensive linemen. As long as they can be in the right spot, and do just enough, then they're fine. We'd rather have weapons. That didn't give if I'm an offensive lineman for the team, that doesn't give me a lot of confidence. How do you feel about the offensive line?
I think it's arguably the worst position group on the football team. I would argue second to worst, but most would argue worst. We'll save that.
What's the worst?
I think I don't like to use the word worst. I would say the weakest right now is because of the this unproven is the safety group. If I'm being honest, there's no experience there right now, and I don't want to hear about Huff. He's coming back from an Achilles. I don't know, is that all pro season repeatable? Not sure. I mean, for every big splash play you have that voters love, he was giving up, plays in the passing game as well. I think he's just kind of an in-the-box safety. Neither here nor there. Like I said, you get to the defense side, happy to have that conversation as well.
Yeah. We'll just have to have you back. And we'll talk defense.
If I just plan in my own seat, I'm sorry. But I do think it is, again, most people would tell you, and they're not wrong, that it's the worst position group on the team. Mm-hmm. Again, your comment when you hear from Forrester, right, about hey, we just need pylons. Well, it makes sense, right? They really just need some guys who can get in the way every once in a while of the defender because of all the misdirection and trickery and just the offensive scheme. We've seen this with Kyle. I mean, maybe the last time Kyle had a really good offensive line, The year he was the OC in Cleveland, actually, they had a pretty solid offensive line. Not a lot of other people on that team, but he's never really had that. I mean, he's got the best in the business in Trent Williams. But the short answer is like it's not good enough. It's not nowhere near deep enough to overcome. Like, let's be very clear about something. God forbid something happens to Trent Williams. We're in a lot of trouble. Like George Kittle doesn't play left tackle, and he's our second best offensive lineman, right? And he arguably, like, I'd rather see the offense with him not there, right? You know, like I want to see him moved out where he's a nightmare and a mismatch. But it's not good, dude. It's not good. I'm a little excited about the rookie. Not really. If I'm being like, I think he'll be a player, and I think he'll get a chance to get into the lineup, and I think he'll do it earlier than we suspect. But you're not riddled with superstars up and down that line. Oh, I shouldn't say that. I think Aaron Banks is a really good player, actually.
I think
right?
So
He's just taking his while to get there. But from center on down to the right, like just a lot of unknown. You know what I mean? And not a lot of confidence coming from those bodies.
Yeah, I agree with you. I like Aaron Banks. And I think that he dealt with some injuries last season. But I think the left side we don't worry about.
That's why we run the ball there every time.
It is all three of the other positions.
Yeah.
And we were hearing that a lot this offseason about Brendel's knee issues. And will he even be able to? I'm interested to see if he's even going to be ready for training camp. We haven't really heard much about it. I know that we heard a while ago about his knee issues, but I haven't heard anything since. But what if John Feliciano, because everybody seems to think that we should just stick John Feliciano there, and that should just be the way that we go with it. But I question that decision because the reason why they like Brendel in the first place was because he's a smart guy. He can handle the protection calls at the line, and not that he's the greatest center in the world. He's undersized. He is athletic, but he's undersized, and I think that comes into play. But Feliciano, I question, can he make those protection calls? Because we haven't seen him do it. He hasn't had to do it in his career.
That's the operative point is he hasn't had to do it. And I agree with you. I don't think that's the answer. I think some of these players get touted for their versatility and playing multiple positions, across the line. Doesn't mean they're any good at any of them, right? I mean, listen, they're far better than I am, right? We'll call that what it is. But I think if Brendel being hurt with the knee right now, right? Like we already know he's going to miss camp. So that's going to give Feliciano, that's going to give Puny, that's going to give a couple other people reps at the position. Maybe some unheralded individual really shines with it. But I said all along and felt all along that they were going to trot out the same offensive line that we saw in the Super Bowl if everybody was healthy through camp. Not the rookie breaking through right away, not, a free agent brought in playing right away. It was going to be Trent, Banks, Brendel, some combination of Burford and Feliciano and McKivitz. Like that was going to be the offensive line. And I don't know. I don't know if Feliciano's the answer. I doubt he is, right? I just don't think it's enough time. Here's what I do know about offensive line, other than I never played the position. Is continuity is a really good thing for a unit. You know what I mean? Like you don't want to be playing musical chairs with people. So inherently, I feel like barring injury, if you trotted out the same five, there's an increased likelihood that they're going to perform better than as a group than they did the year before, right? Another year playing alongside each other, and those sort of things might make up for the talent deficit that is on the right side of the line. I don't know, but I just know that it gives me, because you protect our future asset, right? Like the thing that's going to make us viable for years to come, so long as he continues on that trajectory. So I lose sleep over that. Like, can you keep that man upright, right? He's not Lamar Jackson. Yes, he can scramble. Yes, he can do things. He's not Lamar Jackson. He's not Patty Mahomes. He's not those guys. Like, Brock still needs time. Got to give him time.
Yeah, and I mean that's the key. But it's kind of weird because when you watched last year when Kyle would call those drop back plays, those 5 and 7 step drop plays, that's not when you need pylons in front of Brock. Like, I mean, And we quite frequently saw the play just break down and Brock had to make something out of nothing. And at what point? At what point? And that's why we question, I think, as fans, at what point are you gonna see the value in not even so much going out and getting guys to be those superior blockers, just but try to make an effort to upgrade. Just try to make an effort to do it. Because this is the thing. I know that they don't want to pay the offensive line. They want to use that money for their skill players. I get it. But at the same time, you've got to protect your asset because Brock ain't the biggest guy on the planet. He can't be taking hits all season long. He went through some injuries. He almost got his arm ripped off the 1 year in the worst possible time. But then the next year he took a couple of shots a couple of times where I was like, oh, I got a little nervous. And so I don't know. I'm hoping that they find a better way. That's why I talk about I hope that they can flesh out that drop back game and figure out a way, if for no other reason than to make it more of a quick game. Make it more of a quick game and get that part down and get the ball out of his hands early because we don't have the offensive linemen to hold up, and God forbid Trent goes down. He's going to miss 2 to 3 games a season. It happens 100%. Every year.
Yep.
So, but all 3 games that he wasn't in, we lost. Granted, we didn't have Debo either, but I think that Trent Williams was the bigger loss of the 2, in my opinion. But that's the thing, and he's 36 now.
Yep.
At what point? Are we going to just try to upgrade?
Yeah, I was perplexed too that there was no inherent you want to try to replace the position before you have to replace the position, right? Yeah. You know what I mean? You want to get out ahead of that. And I think the 49ers have been spoiled. They haven't had to worry about the left tackle position for the last 15, 16 years. You know what I mean? Between Joe Staley and then Trent Williams. Life's going to get more difficult for your $50 million a year quarterback if there's not somebody to protect his blind side. It's just real simple.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. But so we're about to get out of here, but before we do, so we talked about all the position groups. I've got to talk about the tight ends a little bit, and I didn't put anything in my notes about it, but there's so many people. There's so many tight ends in this position group right now. I think it's really the biggest group I've seen them have in a while.
Yeah.
Who do you think ends up being the 3? Because I think there's going to be 3.
I think you're going to see Kittle, obvious. Mm-hmm. I think Logan Thomas, and I think Braden Willis.
Okay.
I think the rookie, the undrafted rookie Pline, I think he'll give him a little run. But I think Latu's days are numbered. The only reason that he'd stick around is just based on capital spent on him being a 3rd round draft pick. But I like more that. Yes, due to injury and forced to be in the spot, but somebody like Willis, he took reps in the Super Bowl for us the previous year, right?
True.
He's got game experience. I'd rather build off of that than somebody who's barely seen camp, regardless of what I invested on. But I think Logan Thomas is the vet, the guy you want, guy that still a mismatch, for a lot of linebackers in the league and even in some safeties, and just a savvy vet. I just think, God forbid something happens to George and he's out a week or 2, you got to like your chances with somebody like Logan playing behind him. So I think Kittle, Thomas, and Willis. Those are my 3.
Yeah. And I agree. I think Willis, I've heard a lot of people say that they believe Willis is Juice's successor, and he's eventually going to be a fullback. And I think he sticks on the team because, once again, he plays special teams. He plays a lot of special teams. But, I agree. I think it's going to be Kittle. I think it's going to be Kittle, Logan Thomas, and it would not surprise me if Braden Willis is the 3rd. They have that other guy, Sauber, that is more of a Charlie Warner type. It's just a blocking tight end. If Logan Thomas cannot block in the scheme. If he's not picking up the scheme and he's just terrible at blocking, I could see them holding on to him instead of Braden Willis. I could see it happen. And I think Pline or Pline, I don't know how you pronounce his name. I think he's going to be on the practice squad. I think come hell or high water because he's got a lot of ability from what I hear and from what I saw on the. I watched a few highlights of him. I'm not going to act like I watched tape.
Yeah.
I don't want Rich coming from me.
He will find you.
But yeah, I think he's going to end up on the practice squad, and yeah, but I think that they have a lot of options, which is more options than they've had. I think anything is better than Dwelly and Charlie Warner. I'm sorry, those guys were their time is come and gone, but.
I just like Logan Thomas. I think he gives you they play a lot of 2 tight end sets, right? When it was Charlie Warner and Kittle out there, and if you had any inclination it was going to be a pass play, you know that Kittle's the option, right? It's not Charlie Warner, so you know who's staying in the block. But if you now have Kittle and someone like Logan Thomas on the field with all the other weapons, it's hard to predict what it is just based out of formation, and you can. I could see Logan Thomas getting heavily involved in the game plan, especially early in the season, so much unknown where Kyle can dab into his bag and, you're not as predictable. I think teams get much more predictable. I think you made this point right in the very beginning, down the stretch, you become a little bit more predictable. So we'll see. It is an interesting position group for sure, because it's the first time I can remember there's 6 on the active roster, now, going into camp, which makes sense though, because they are a team that carries 3. Right, they will have 3 tight ends. But there's a couple that I don't think. Who was it? Tongs or however you say his name.
Tongs. He's on there.
He's not sticking around, and I really think Latu is on the outs big time.
I don't even think that. I think that's the worst kept secret. I just think that there's no way that I see him making the roster, because I feel like Logan Thomas, as long as he stays healthy, and he's going to be on the roster.
Yeah.
They're going to find a way he's going to be the number 2 just because of what you said. He gives you a receiving threat.
Yeah.
Especially in the red zone, because he's just a massive human being. He makes Kittle look small. I don't know.
He's a big boy.
But yeah, no, I think Latu had his opportunity. He can't get on the field. It is what it is.
Yep.
But dude, I had such a good time having you on today. It was a great show. Man, chat, you did your thing. Appreciate you guys coming through. But why don't you tell everybody where they can find your stuff one more time on the socials and in YouTube land?
Yeah, so in YouTube land, it's Island 49. Simple. You can catch me hopefully doing more with you guys, your boy here, Pete, and you see me do some Monday shows with Steph throughout the season. And then on Twitter, it's just at Smith_Weston, like Smith and Wesson, _N_Wesson. It's fine. You'll find me. I'm obnoxious. I put some things out there once in a while. I'll comment on your stuff too. Yeah. We'll all have fun. Just remember, at the end of the day, this is all about smiling, getting the 49er stuff off our chest. But Peter, I agree with you, man. Had a blast, and can't thank you enough for having me on. And I sincerely hope we get a chance to do it again.
Yeah, absolutely. And once again, make sure you give the video a like. Make sure that you give it a subscribe. Make sure that you hit the bell so you get the notifications for when I go live. And make sure to tell a friend so we can be friends every day, every week. I appreciate it. And but we're going to get out of here. Like I said, appreciate you coming on, Weston. Appreciate the chat. You guys have a great evening. Have a great weekend coming up. And just treat each other right. But until then, as always, go Niners.